Confessions of a Disgruntled Spy by Slobodan Radojev. Mitrić. Chapter 2. Enrollment in the Yugoslav Secret Service. The day off with Olgica passed very quickly. I accompanied her to the station and then went back to the army barracks. Captain Zarko called me into his office immediately. I remember that it was a Thursday, although it was in the month of May. The days were not sunny. The sun probably has a great influence on people. On the cloudy day, I felt as if heaven was crying for me, crying, because I sold my soul to heartless people. So, did you have a good time, Zoran? Captain Zarko asked me, uttering my name so warmly and softly that one would have thought it was coming from the heart. But I knew Zarko had no heart anymore and that all those nice words were coming from his lungs, where his soul used to be before being sold to the devil a long time ago, in the same way I sold mine that day. I had a good time, comrade Captain Zarko. I answered with the same tone of voice. A voice that only wicked hyenas understood and that was only known to wolves disguised as lambs. We must go and visit a comrade from the Secret Service. Secondly, you have received a summons to appear before the Belgrade District Court. They have to either charge you or set you free within 2 days. You must keep that in mind. Our help depends on what you do today. I didn't utter a word. I felt disgusted by this apparently nice officer. I couldn't believe that man to be so evil and still look so naive. No longer able to restrain myself, I said impudently, "So, you want to make a squealer out of me?" Captain Zarko placed his hand on my shoulder and patted me in a rather friendly manner. "Nobody is forcing you, Zoran, to say anything. That must be clear to you. We know something, but you must be honest with us and tell us what we don't know. For example, which one of you 4 guys drew those swastikas?" Although I had expected that question, I became very afraid upon hearing it. I felt as if I were a suspect. I knew who had drawn those swastikas, but I also knew that they were drawn as a sign of a youthful rebellion. My friend hated Germans and swastikas more than Captain Zarko did. He drew them because he liked to brag and to show that he was not afraid of anything. Since I could send him to prison with my confession, I decided not to mention his name and to bury it as a secret deep inside of me. But my resolve didn't last long. As soon as Captain Zarko began mentioning attractive prospects, such as becoming an important person, a prospect out of reach for most people, I started talking as if I were the biggest gossip monger alive. Imagine, Zoran, what great help you could be to your country. I am strongly convinced that you were born to be a secret agent. He looked at me with admiration as if I really deserved that. I was weakened and influenced by his flattery. For example, you could become a member of our Secret Service in a couple of months. I am convinced that you could become a miracle of a man. We interrupted our conversation because of the appointment we had at the Secret Service headquarters in the military base where I was stationed during my service. The Secret Service headquarters surprised me. It was in the ambulance station of the army barracks with a temporary hospital on the first floor. There were waiting rooms and offices for the medical staff on the ground floor. The Secret Service headquarters were situated on the top floor with no signs of its existence anywhere so as to avoid arousing any interest. We entered the office of the officer in charge. I stood straight and as a soldier saluted a major, who was about 40 years old. His hair had already turned grey. He seemed somehow strange. His behavior was so polite and friendly that I really enjoyed listening to him. "Hello, young man." He shook hands with me, while I looked at him without saying a word. I had gotten used to uniforms from the time I was born. My father was also a police officer. Wherever we lived, my father's friends were always military or police officers. I knew many officers, but having become a soldier, I understood that you cannot be honest with them. In my relationship with those men, I always used the clear and concise words, "I understand." Whether I understood something or not, didn't matter. And now, since I had gotten in trouble because of my friends, I couldn't understand the sudden change of attitude and behavior on the part of those strict and stern officers. Zarko recently allowed me to be with him on a first-name basis, and this major, whom I saw for the first time, started joking with me as if we were old friends, even though I had been in these barracks here for only 3 months. How are you getting on with your karate? You must be a tough guy. I've heard a lot about you. But now that I see you, I wouldn't say you're that dangerous. They probably praised you more than you deserve. What do you say? Am I right? Tough guy. He patted me on the shoulder. Zarko had started patting me on the shoulder the day before, which I didn't like at all. I was afraid of such excessive friendship. Well, young man, tell me, how do you like it here? I looked at the acute COR of the Secret Service headquarters. The walls were covered with all sorts of maps. I only recognized a map of Yugoslavia. Do you want a cup of coffee? The major asked. His secretary, a short 20-year-old brunette, smiling cordially, put 3 cups of Turkish coffee in front of us. Who drew those swastikas? Come on. Tell us so that we can finish this story for good. It's not all that important thing for us, but still, let's get it over with. I didn't know how it happened. But before I could even hear my own voice, I said, Miso, okay, Zorin. You will go back to prison again and try to find out why Zors is pretending to be a lunatic. Just be careful that they don't discover that we made a deal here and that there is a Secret Service headquarters up here. You will go to Belgrade the day after tomorrow. You will be sentenced there. But that doesn't mean that you'll have to go to prison. We talked for a long time. He interrogated me on all sorts of things, while I spoke as if I were drugged. In fact, I was drugged. But with a strange sort of spying drug. Suddenly I felt an irresistible urge to spy. I couldn't believe the enormous strength it gave me, and that in such a short time I had become a talented regime spy. That day I became the happiest man in the world. I whispered to myself, Zoran Jovanovic, secret agent. I imagined myself as a dignitary. I saw other people admiring and revering me as I stood before them with lots of medals pinned on my chest, shining bright like a New Year's tree and an example for others. I felt enormously happiness and pride. I used to read much about spies and had been afraid of them. But now I was so happy to become a spy myself, of whom many people would be afraid. I was only 19 years old, but felt as if I were the most powerful man in the world. As a true-born optimist, I felt as if I finally had a chance to become an important person. I only had to throw away my honesty, my character, and to lose my soul, and success would be guaranteed. I couldn't anticipate what my real future would be. Almost a week passed by since coming back from Belgrade. I was sentenced to 18 months and ordered to go to prison there after finishing my military service. When I told Zarko and Major Jogar that, they only laughed. Major Jogar told me, "Don't worry. I've already arranged a conditional sentence for you." The next day, Captain Zarko informed me that I would be dismissed from the army as a fully disabled person. After that, I returned to Belgrade for good. My mother was very worried, because I had allegedly been dismissed from the army, because of severe heart problems. My father was the only person who really knew why I had left the army. He told me it was good that I had finally come to my senses by choosing the path that leads to the common good. He was proud of the fact that I had become a secret agent and believed that I would never again embarrass him. Captain Zarko was also transferred to Belgrade, where we met every day. After 10 days, I met an elderly man whose name was Miko. He lived near the building in which I lived. Miko arranged with the captain to teach me various skills, such as how to use weapons. We often went to a military field in Batanica to practice shooting with all kinds of weapons, until we became completely exhausted. I was quite a good marksman, capable of hitting a target in the head from a distance of 50 meters. Maiko always advised me to aim for the head. Nobody has a chance to survive that, he said, smiling like Dracula from the horror movies. Maiko was nearly 50 years old. He always wore dark glasses, so that I was never able to see his eyes. In his 3-room apartment in New Belgrade he had installed many spy training devices. I learned how to counterfeit different kinds of seals and to forge passports and many other documents. I learned how to install hardly visible wiretapping devices and how to take and develop photos myself. I continued doing karate in a sports club called Partizan. I was in excellent shape. Then, Maiko started teaching me other deadly skills. We worked for 3 months on so-called suicides. I studied various books, mostly criminological textbooks about the work of the public service, of the different police forces in the world, methods of prosecution, investigation and seizure of criminals. Maiko constantly repeated how very important it was to learn all these things before being sent to the West or the East. One day in his apartment he became very serious, more than he usually was, and addressed me with dignity. Zoran, you're still very young. Some of my friends have told me that you're ready to take on a most difficult task. I try to convince them that you're still too young and inexperienced for serious tasks and that it would be best to wait a couple of years until you have gained enough experience. Otherwise, you could easily be caught by the enemy and then everything would fail. I'm thinking about your life as well. Don't you feel sorry for me? I yelled angrily, almost punching him with my fist. I couldn't believe him to be such a bastard. He pretended to be my friend, but still considered me a youngster. Calm down, Zoran, don't be angry with me. I finally agreed that they send you on a mission to France. It's the beginning of August now. You will go there in a month. I will make a passport for you today with a French tourist visa for 10 days. When you arrive in Paris, you can easily extend your visa there. I started screaming from happiness and couldn't get myself together for a long time. I could already sniff the scent of the Seine and enjoy the charms of the Eiffel Tower. My joy was interrupted by Maiko's words, which really struck me. That day I learned that happiness has its price. Maiko's words brought me back to reality. In order to go to Paris, you must totally forget one person. It is necessary that this person no longer finds a place in your heart. The only love you will feel in the future is the love for your service. Your work will help our country a great deal. So, Zoran, from now on, Olgica is dead and gone for you. You simply have to put her out of your mind, otherwise the mission will fail. I felt as if this wasn't real, but somehow managed to stay calm. Maiko made a cup of coffee for me. Coffee will help you calm down and concentrate. You're expecting a big assignment. Maybe your entire future depends on that assignment. On that same day, I broke up with Olgica and concentrated myself completely on fulfilling the big task in Paris. ****.